The prenup was supposed to be her idea. That's what made watching Tara's face crumble so damn satisfying when I slid the papers across our kitchen table that Tuesday morning in October. "What the hell is this, Harper?" she asked, her manicured fingers trembling as she flipped through the legal documents. The diamond tennis bracelet I'd never bought her caught the morning light streaming through our suburban Minneapolis kitchen window. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. "Exactly what you've been asking for," I said, sipping my coffee and watching her read. "Protection, security. You know, like Samantha has with her BMW husband." Tara Sloan, she'd kept her maiden name for professional reasons, had been my wife for 3 years. At 34, she managed an upscale boutique in Edina and had recently developed an obsession with what she called real success. Apparently, real success drove German luxury cars and didn't spend Saturday nights doing tax returns for small businesses. "Harper, this says if either party commits adultery, they forfeit all marital assets." Her voice had that shrill edge it got when her carefully constructed world started showing cracks. "Standard clause," I replied. "Mallory Reese drew it up. Same lawyer Samantha used. Funny thing about Samantha's prenup. Turns out it saved her marriage. Amazing how fidelity clauses work better than couples therapy." I watched Tara's throat work as she swallowed hard. Behind her, through the sliding glass doors, our backyard looked ordinary. Suburban. The kind of place where accountants lived with their boutique manager wives and pretended everything was perfect. "We've been married 3 years, Harper. Why now?" "Because my income's about to jump significantly. New client portfolio, and you've been so worried about financial security lately." I leaned back in my chair, studying her face. All that talk about BMW husbands and real men, figured I should protect us both. The truth was, I'd been watching Tara for 6 months, watching her come home late from inventory meetings, watching her text someone named Grant at midnight, watching her develop sudden interests in expensive jewelry and weekend trips to fashion markets. In Chicago, Grant Irwin was one of my clients. Recently divorced, drove a silver Audi A8, and had the kind of confidence that came from inherited wealth and minimal consequences. He owned 3 franchise restaurants and thought paying his quarterly taxes was beneath him. That's where I came in. "I need to think about this," Tara said, setting the papers down like they might bite her. "Take your time. Mallory says we have 30 days to finalize everything." I stood up, straightening my tie. "I'm meeting Grant this morning about his Q3 statements. Want me to give him your regards?" The color drained from her face so fast I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. 3 months earlier, Tara had come home from drinks with Samantha and Eric, Samantha's BMW husband, with a theory about successful marriages. "You know what the difference is between us and them?" she'd asked, kicking off her heels and pouring herself a glass of wine that cost more than my monthly gym membership. "Enlighten me," I'd said from the couch where I was reviewing a client's books. "Ambition, drive. Samantha's husband just closed a deal worth $2 million. $2 million, Harper. And what did you do today?" I'd looked up from the spreadsheet showing how I'd saved another client $15,000 in tax liability. Helped the Nakamura family keep their restaurant open. Boring stuff. That's exactly what I mean. She'd settled into the chair across from me, wine glass catching the lamplight. "You're satisfied with small victories. Samantha's husband thinks bigger." Samantha's husband also inherited his father's construction company and a client list dating back to 1987. Details. She'd waved her hand dismissively. "The point is, mindset. Winners think like winners." I'd wanted to mention that Samantha's husband had also been through 2 bankruptcies and a cocaine problem, but Tara had already moved on to scrolling through Instagram, probably looking at pictures of other people's success. That conversation had planted the first seed of suspicion. The second came when I noticed Tara's sudden interest in my client list. "Tell me about this Grant person," she'd said one evening in August, reading over my shoulder as I prepared invoices. "Restaurant owner. Pays late, complains about everything, tips his servers minimum wage. But successful? Depends how you define success. He's got money, if that's what you mean." Money is exactly what I mean. She'd traced a finger down the invoice showing Grant's substantial quarterly payment. "Maybe we should have him over for dinner sometime. Network a little." I'd agreed because I was curious, and because I wanted to see what Tara was really after. The dinner happened in September. Grant showed up 45 minutes late in his Audi, wearing a suit that cost more than most people's rent, and an attitude that suggested punctuality was for people who couldn't afford to keep others waiting. "Beautiful home," he'd said, though his eyes were already scanning for something more interesting than our suburban split level. "Tara, you look stunning." She'd blushed like a teenager. Actually blushed. During dinner, Grant held court with stories about his restaurants, his recent divorce settlement, and his plans to expand into the Twin Cities market. Tara hung on every word while I served the chicken marsala and wondered if I was watching my marriage implode in real time. "Harper's being modest," Tara had said when Grant asked about my work. "He handles accounts for some very successful businesses." "Accounting," Grant had mused, cutting his chicken with surgical precision. "Essential but thankless work, like plumbing, but with numbers." I'd smiled and refilled his wine glass. "Someone has to keep track of where the money goes." "True, though I prefer focusing on where it comes from." He'd raised his glass in a mock toast. "To the money makers and the money counters. Both necessary, I suppose." After he left, in his Audi, which Tara watched from the window until the taillights disappeared, my wife had been unusually quiet. "Interesting guy," I'd said while loading the dishwasher. "Very successful. Very divorced. That's not his fault. His ex-wife didn't appreciate what she had." I'd looked at her then, really looked, at the way she was still staring out the window, at the dreamy expression that had nothing to do with our dinner conversation and everything to do with silver Audis and men who thought accountants were plumbers with calculators. "Good thing you appreciate what you have?" I'd said. She'd turned back to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Of course I do, honey." That was the night I started paying attention. Really paying attention. Tara wasn't particularly good at deception. She was, however, excellent at rationalization. "Grant wants to discuss expanding his business," she'd explained when I found her texting at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday in September. "He values my input on marketing to female demographics." At 11 p.m.? He's a night owl. Creative types work different hours. I'd nodded and gone back to reading, but made a mental note. Grant Irwin was about as creative as a tax code, and his idea of marketing to women involved hiring servers based on their cup size. The late-night texts became a pattern. So did Tara's sudden interest in girls' nights, that involved coming home with her lipstick gone and her hair looking like she'd been in a convertible. Since Samantha drove a Prius and Eric was allergic to fun, I had my doubts about their wild evenings. "We went to that new place in Uptown," she'd say, or Samantha wanted to try the wine bar in Wayzata. Always somewhere with no mutual friends, always somewhere I'd never suggest we go together. I started keeping a calendar, not because I'm naturally suspicious, but because I'm an accountant. Patterns are my business. Tuesday, September 12th. Tech session until 11:47 p.m. Subject, Grant's marketing questions. Friday, September 15th, girls' night in Uptown. Home at 1:23 a.m., shower immediately. Wednesday, September 20th. Quick coffee with Samantha. Gone 4 hours, came back with shopping bags from stores Samantha couldn't afford. Saturday, September 23rd. Spa day with the girls. No mention of spa treatments, but definitely got her hair done somewhere. By October, the pattern was clear enough to use in a tax audit. What I needed was proof that would hold up in something more serious than an IRS review. That's when I called Mallory Reese. Mallory had handled my Aunt Val's divorce 3 years earlier, and Val still spoke about her with the kind of reverence usually reserved for saints or really good mechanics. That woman, Val had said, could negotiate the devil out of his pitchfork. Mallory's office occupied the top floor of a downtown Minneapolis high-rise, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Mississippi River. She was 50-something, silver-haired, and had the kind of direct stare that made guilty people confess before she asked any questions. "So," she said after I'd explained my situation, "your wife is having an affair with your client, and you want a prenup to protect your assets." "I want a prenup because my wife suggested it. The affair is just a bonus." "Evidence?" I slid a folder across her desk. Text records, credit card statements, photos, timeline analysis. She flipped through the documents with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd seen this story 100 times. "This is thorough. Also completely legal. How do you want to handle this?" "I want her to sign the prenup thinking she's protecting herself from me. Then I want her to realize what she's actually done." Mallory smiled for the first time since I'd walked into her office. "I like you, Harper. This is going to be fun." The prenup was a work of art. 15 pages of legal language that essentially said, play fair or lose everything. The adultery clause was buried on page 9, nestled between sections on property division and debt responsibility. Unless you were looking for it specifically, it read like standard legal boilerplate. "Most people skim these," Mallory had explained. "They see the big-ticket items, house, cars, retirement accounts, and assume the rest is just lawyer talk." "And if she has it reviewed by her own attorney?" Then she'll know exactly what she's signing. But people having affairs don't usually seek legal advice about fidelity clauses. Guilt makes them stupid. I'd taken the documents home that Tuesday morning in October, set them on the kitchen table, and waited for Tara to wake up. Watching her read through the prenup was like watching someone realize they'd been playing poker with their cards face up. "I need time to think," she'd said again, and I'd nodded sympathetically. "Of course. It's a big decision. Maybe talk it over with Samantha or Grant. Get some perspective." She'd flinched at Grant's name like I'd slapped her. "Why would I talk to Grant about our prenup? He went through a messy divorce. Might have some insights about protecting assets." "Right. Assets." She'd gathered the papers like they were contaminated? "I'll think about it." I'd kissed her forehead before leaving for work. "Take all the time you need, honey. I trust you completely." Tara held out for 6 days. 6 days of hushed phone calls, canceled girls' nights, and the kind of nervous energy that comes from having your world turned upside down by 17 pages of legal documentation. I spent those 6 days acting like the devoted husband who just wanted to protect our future together. I brought her coffee in bed, suggested we look at new cars, maybe something German, and mentioned how happy Samantha seemed now that she and Eric had their financial security locked down. "Harper," she'd said on Sunday night, "about the prenup. What about it? Some of the language is intense. Mallory writes thorough contracts. Better safe than sorry, right? The part about adultery. That seems extreme." I'd looked up from the football game I wasn't really watching. "You thinking of having an affair?" "Of course not. It just seems like we're planning for failure." "We're planning for success. The clause protects both of us. If I cheat, you get everything. If you cheat, I do. Fair is fair." She'd been quiet for a long moment, staring at the television without seeing it. "And if neither of us cheats?" "Then it doesn't matter what the contract says. We'll be too busy being happy." Monday morning, she signed. Sitting at our kitchen table in her silk robe, drinking coffee from the mug I'd bought her for our 2nd anniversary, Tara Sloan put her signature on a document that would destroy her life if she continued down the path she'd been traveling. "There," she said, sliding the papers back to me. "Happy now?" "Thrilled." I gathered the documents and kissed her cheek. "Now we can focus on the future." "What kind of future?" "The kind where we trust each other completely. The kind where we don't have to worry about BMW husbands or girls' nights or late-night business consultations." She went very still. "What do you mean?" "I mean, we're secure now. Legally, financially, emotionally. Nothing can touch us as long as we're honest with each other." I left her sitting at the table and drove to Mallory's office to file the prenup. In the rearview mirror, I could see our house getting smaller, but I had the distinct feeling my life was about to get much larger. Mallory reviewed the signed documents with satisfaction. She actually signed it. I'm impressed. Guilt makes people stupid, right? Guilt and panic. She's probably hoping she can end the affair before you find out about it. Too late for that. "What's your next move?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the calendar I'd been keeping. "Friday night, Grant's favorite restaurant. I'm taking my wife out for a celebration dinner." "Celebration of what?" "Our new prenup, our renewed commitment, our bright future together." I smiled. "And I'm inviting a few friends to join us." Mallory leaned back in her chair. "Harper, I think I'm going to enjoy watching this play out. Just remember, everything has to be legal. Legal doesn't mean merciful." "Good. I'm not feeling particularly merciful." Zelo was the kind of restaurant where people went to see and be seen. White tablecloths, dim lighting, and entrees that cost more than most people spent on groceries in a week. It was also Grant Irwin's favorite place to conduct business dinners, which made it perfect for what I had planned. I'd made reservations for Friday night. Table for 4, prime seating near the bar where the lighting was good and the acoustics carried. Then I'd made some phone calls. "Harper," Samantha's voice was bright with curiosity when she answered. "Tara said you two signed some kind of contract?" "Prenup. We're celebrating Friday night at Zelo. Want to join us? You and Eric?" "A prenup? After 3 years of marriage?" "Better late than never. Tara's been so worried about financial security, and with my business expanding..." I let the sentence trail off. "Anyway, we'd love to have you there. 8 o'clock. Samantha agreed immediately. She lived for social events, especially ones that might involve drama or gossip. Eric would come because Samantha told him to, and because Zelo had good steaks. The second call was trickier. "Grant Irwin's office. This is Stephanie." "Hi, Stephanie. This is Harper Vance, Grant's accountant. Is he available?" "He's in a meeting, but I can take a message. Just tell him Harper called about Friday night. Zelo, 8 o'clock. I'll be there with Tara celebrating our new prenup." I hung up before she could ask for clarification. Grant would get the message, and he'd understand exactly what it meant. The question was whether he'd show up or run. Friday evening, I dressed carefully, navy suit, white shirt, red tie, the kind of outfit that said successful professional without screaming revenge plot in progress. Tara wore a black dress that was new and expensive. "You look beautiful," I told her as we drove downtown. "That dress is stunning. New?" "I've had it for a while." "Funny. Still has the tags." Her hand flew to the back of her neck, where the price tag was indeed still attached. "I forgot to cut it off." $500. Nice investment." "It was on sale." "I'm sure it was." We drove the rest of the way in silence, Tara staring out the window at the Minneapolis skyline while I mentally reviewed my plan. Everything depended on timing, and timing depended on whether Grant was stupid enough to show up. Zelo was busy for a Friday night, filled with the usual mix of business dinners and date nights. Our table was perfect, visible from the entrance, close enough to other diners to ensure an audience, far enough from the kitchen to avoid interruptions. Samantha and Eric arrived first. Samantha immediately launched into questions about the prenup while Eric studied the wine list with the intensity of someone who'd rather be anywhere else. "So, what prompted this sudden need for legal protection?" Samantha asked after we'd ordered drinks. "Harper's business is expanding," Tara said quickly. "We wanted to make sure we were both protected." "Protected from what?" "The usual things," I said. "Debt, liability, infidelity. You know how it is." Samantha's eyes lit up. She knew exactly how it was. Her own prenup had been the subject of endless conversations with Tara over the past year. "Smart thinking," Eric said, speaking up for the first time. "Wish we'd done it sooner?" "Why?" Tara asked. "Having problems?" "No problems," Samantha said firmly. "Just peace of mind. Right, Eric?" Eric nodded and went back to the wine list. He was a man of few words, most of them related to German automotive engineering or craft beer. I liked him. At 8:15, Grant walked in. He was alone, which surprised me. He was also nervous, which didn't. His usual swagger was replaced by something more cautious as he scanned the restaurant. When his eyes found our table, he hesitated for just a moment before walking over. "Harper, what a coincidence." "Grant, what brings you to Zelo tonight?" "Business dinner. Client canceled at the last minute." He glanced at Tara, who had gone pale. "Mind if I join you for a drink?" "Of course not. We're celebrating." "Celebrating what?" "Tara and I just signed a prenup. Finally got our financial house in order." Grant's smile faltered. "Prenup? After 3 years?" "Better late than never. Protects both of us from any complications." I watched Grant process this information. He was smart enough to understand what I was really saying, but arrogant enough to think he could handle whatever game I was playing. "Congratulations," he said, signaling the waiter for a scotch. "Financial security is important." "Essential," I agreed, "especially when there's so much trust involved." Tara was staring at her wine glass like it might provide an escape route. Samantha was watching the interaction with the fascination of someone witnessing a car accident. Eric was still reading the wine list. "So, Grant," Samantha said, "how do you know Harper and Tara?" "Harper handles my business accounts. And Tara," he glanced at my wife. "Tara's been helping me with some marketing consultation." "Marketing?" Samantha's eyebrows rose. "I didn't know you did marketing, Tara." "Just some informal advice," Tara said quickly. "Female demographic insights." "How interesting. What kind of insights?" Before Tara could answer, I stood up. "Excuse me for a moment. I need to make a phone call." I walked toward the restaurant's entrance, pulling out my phone, but instead of making a call, I positioned myself where I could watch our table while staying out of earshot. I wanted to see what happened when I wasn't there to control the conversation. Grant leaned closer to Tara immediately. Even from across the restaurant, I could see the tension in her shoulders as he spoke. Samantha was asking questions, her reporter instincts activated by the strange dynamic at the table. Eric had finally looked up from the wine list and was watching Grant with the kind of attention he usually reserved for football games. After 5 minutes, I walked back to the table. "Sorry about that. Work calls, you know how it is." "Everything okay?" Tara asked. "Perfect. Actually, I have some news." I raised my wine glass. A toast. To new beginnings, honest relationships, and the people who help us see things clearly. Grant lifted his scotch. Samantha raised her wine. Eric grabbed his beer. Tara hesitated before picking up her glass. "To clarity," I said, looking directly at Grant. "And consequences." We drank. Grant's hand was shaking slightly as he set down his glass. "Well," he said, "I should probably get going. Early morning tomorrow." "Stay for dinner," I suggested. "We're just getting started. Actually, I think I should—" "Grant." The voice came from behind him, a woman's voice sharp with anger and recognition. Grant turned slowly, and his face went white. Standing behind him was a woman in her 40s, blonde, well-dressed, and absolutely furious. I'd never seen her before, but I knew exactly who she was. "Hello, Amanda," Grant said quietly. "Don't you hello Amanda me, you piece of shit." Her voice was loud enough to turn heads at nearby tables. "What the hell are you doing here?" "Having dinner with friends." "Friends?" Amanda's eyes swept the table, landing on Tara. "Is this her? Is this the whore you've been sleeping?" The restaurant went quiet. Not completely silent, but quiet enough that our table had become the evening's entertainment. "Amanda, please." "Please what? Please don't embarrass you in front of your little girlfriend," she turned to Tara. "Honey, do you know this man is still married?" Tara's wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the floor. "What?" "Married. As in, still has a wife. As in, me." Amanda pulled out her phone. "Want to see the wedding pictures? They're still on Facebook." Grant stood up quickly. "Amanda, we're divorced." "We're separated, you lying sack of shit. The papers won't be final for another month." She looked at Tara again. "But I'm guessing he didn't mention that part?" I watched Tara's face cycle through confusion, horror, and dawning realization. Samantha was staring with her mouth open. Eric had finally found something more interesting than the wine list. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," I said calmly. "No misunderstanding," Amanda snapped. "I hired a private investigator. I know all about Grant's little side business, the restaurants, the creative accounting, and the married women he likes to seduce." "Married women?" Samantha looked at Tara. "Plural." "Oh, honey," Amanda said. "You're not the first. You're just the most recent." Grant was backing away from the table. "I need to go." "You need to pay your child support," Amanda called after him, "and your half of the mortgage, and the credit card bills you ran up buying jewelry for your girlfriends." He was already halfway to the door. Amanda turned back to our table. "I'm sorry you had to see this, but you needed to know what kind of man you're dealing with." She looked at Tara one more time. "Honey, you can do better. Trust me." Then she walked away, leaving us sitting in the wreckage of what was supposed to be a celebration dinner. The restaurant slowly returned to normal. Conversations resumed. Waiters cleaned up broken glass. Life went on. Except at our table, where my wife was staring at her hands and my friends were trying to process what they'd just witnessed. "Well," I said finally, "that was unexpected." The drive home was silent except for the sound of Tara crying. Not the dramatic sobbing of someone seeking sympathy, but the quiet, desperate tears of someone whose world had just collapsed in public. Samantha and Eric had left immediately after Amanda's revelation, Samantha promising to call later and Eric looking relieved to escape the drama. I'd paid the check, helped Tara to the car, and driven home through the Minneapolis streets while she fell apart in the passenger seat. "Harper," she said as we pulled into our driveway. "Yes? I can explain." "I'm sure you can." "It's not what you think." I turned off the engine and looked at her. In the dim light from our porch, she looked younger than her 34 years. Vulnerable. Almost innocent, if you didn't know better. "What do I think, Tara?" "That I was having an affair." "Were you?" She was quiet for a long moment. "Yes." "With Grant?" "Yes." "The same Grant who's still married and apparently makes a habit of seducing married women." "I didn't know he was still married." "But you knew you were." She started crying again. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Harper. It just happened. He made me feel special, important, like a BMW husband's wife." She flinched. "Don't. Don't what? Don't mention your obsession with successful men. Don't bring up all those conversations about real success and winners and thinking bigger." "I made a mistake. You made a choice. Multiple choices over several months." We sat in the car, the engine ticking as it cooled, while Tara cried and I tried to figure out what I was feeling. Anger, yes. Satisfaction at seeing my plan work perfectly, but also something else. Something that might have been sadness for the marriage we'd never really had. "What happens now?" she asked finally. "Now? Now we go inside, and you pack a bag, and you go stay with Samantha while we figure out the details." "The details?" "The prenup, Tara. The one you signed 6 days ago. The one with the very clear adultery clause that you read and agreed to." Her face went white. Harper, please. We can work this out. We could have worked it out 6 months ago, before Grant, before the lies, before you decided I wasn't successful enough for your new standards. I never said that. You didn't have to. Actions speak louder than words, and your actions have been very clear. I got out of the car and walked to the house. After a moment, she followed. Inside, our home looked exactly the same as it had that morning. Same furniture, same pictures on the walls, same coffee mugs in the sink, but everything felt different, like a stage set after the play had ended. I'll pack some things, Tara said. Good idea. How long? However long it takes Mallory to process the paperwork. She nodded and walked upstairs. I heard drawers opening, closet doors sliding, the sounds of a life being hastily packed into suitcases. I poured myself a scotch and sat in the living room, thinking about the evening. Amanda's appearance had been perfect, better than anything I could have planned. The timing, the location, the public humiliation. It was like the universe had decided to help me out. My phone rang. Samantha. Harper. Oh my God. What just happened? Tara had an affair with Grant, who's apparently still married and has a history of this kind of thing. I can't believe it. I can believe it, but wow. Yeah, wow. Are you okay? I'm fine, Samantha. Better than fine, actually. What do you mean? Tara and I signed a prenup last week, with a very specific adultery clause. Silence on the other end of the line. Samantha? You knew about the affair. I suspected. The prenup confirmed it. You set her up. I protected myself. There's a difference. Harper, that's brilliant and terrifying. It's justice. She's going to call me. She's going to want to stay here. That's up to you. But Samantha, you might want to think about what kind of friend asks you to lie about her affair. What kind of person puts you in that position? Another silence. She never asked me to lie, Samantha said finally. Didn't she? All those girls' nights that weren't really girls' nights? All those stories about wine bars and shopping trips? You knew something was wrong. I suspected, but you didn't want to get involved. I understand. But now you are involved. Now you have to decide what kind of person you want to be. I hung up and finished my scotch. Upstairs, I could hear Tara moving around, packing her life into luggage. She came down 20 minutes later with 2 suitcases and a look of desperate hope. Harper, please. Can we talk about this? We are talking about it. Really talk. About forgiveness. About second chances. Tara, you had an affair with my client. You lied to me for months. You signed a legal document knowing you were in violation of its terms. What exactly is there to forgive? I ended it. Tonight, when I realized what Grant really was, I ended it. You ended it because you got caught. Because Amanda exposed Grant as a fraud and a serial cheater. Not because you suddenly developed a conscience. That's not fair. Fair? I stood up, feeling the anger I'd been controlling all evening finally break free. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been honesty. Fair would have been ending our marriage before you started sleeping with someone else. Fair would have been not making me feel like a failure because I'm not rich enough or flashy enough or successful enough for your new standards. She was crying again. I never meant to hurt you. But you did hurt me. You humiliated me. You made me question everything about myself and our marriage. And you did it all while pretending to be the loving wife who just wanted financial security. I do love you. No, Tara. You love the idea of me. The safe, reliable, boring me who pays the bills and doesn't ask too many questions. But you don't love me enough to be faithful. You don't love me enough to be honest. She picked up her suitcases. This isn't over. Yes, it is. The prenup is legally binding. You committed adultery. You forfeit your claim to marital assets. It's very simple. I'll fight it. With what lawyer? With what money? Tara, you just lost everything. Your marriage, your lover, your financial security. All because you wanted to be a BMW husband's wife instead of an accountant's wife. She walked to the door, then turned back. What about love, Harper? What about the 3 years we had together? What about them? Were you thinking about those 3 years when you were in Grant's bed? Were you thinking about love when you were lying to me about girls' nights and business consultations? She didn't answer. She just walked out the door and got into her car, a Honda Civic that suddenly seemed very small and ordinary. I watched her drive away, then went back inside and poured another scotch. Tomorrow I'd call Mallory and start the legal process. Tomorrow I'd begin the rest of my life. But tonight, I was going to sit in my quiet house and think about justice and revenge and the difference between the two. Monday morning brought 3 phone calls and a revelation that changed everything. The first call was from Mallory. How did Friday night go? Better than expected. Tara confessed to the affair, and Grant's still-married ex-wife provided some very public confirmation. Witnesses? Samantha and Eric, plus about 50 restaurant patrons. Perfect. We can file for dissolution immediately. With the prenup and confirmed adultery, this should be straightforward. There's more. Grant's apparently been running some kind of serial operation. Multiple married women, creative accounting, unpaid debts. Interesting. That might be relevant to your business relationship with him. Already handled. I'm dropping him as a client today. The second call was from Samantha. Harper, Tara's here. She's not doing well. I imagine not. She wants to talk to you. She thinks there might be a way to work things out. There isn't. She says Grant manipulated her, that he told her you two were having problems, that you were planning to divorce her anyway. And she believed him? She wanted to believe him. Harper, I think she really did love you, in her own way. Her own way wasn't good enough, Samantha. I know, I feel sorry for her. Feel sorry for yourself. You're the one who has to live with her now. The third call was the interesting one. A woman's voice, professional but tired. Mr. Vance, this is Detective Sarah Morrison with the Minneapolis Police Department. I understand you're Grant Irwin's accountant? I'm terminating that relationship today. We'd like to talk to you about Mr. Irwin's business practices, specifically his tax filings and financial statements. What kind of problems are we talking about? The kind that involve federal charges for tax evasion and fraud. Can you come in this afternoon? I could indeed. The police station was exactly what you'd expect. Fluorescent lights, industrial carpet, and the smell of bad coffee and worse decisions. Detective Morrison was a woman in her 40s with short brown hair and the kind of direct manner that suggested she'd heard every lie in the book. Mr. Irwin has been under investigation for 6 months, she explained as we sat in a small conference room. Tax evasion, fraudulent business loans, unpaid child support. We've been building a case, but we need someone with access to his real financial records. I handled his quarterly filings. Everything I submitted was based on information he provided. We know we're not investigating you, Mr. Vance. We're hoping you can help us understand what Mr. Irwin was really doing with his money. She spread a series of documents across the table. Bank statements, loan applications, tax returns. The numbers didn't match anything I'd seen. These are Grant's real accounts, she said. Notice anything interesting? I studied the documents. These income figures are completely different from what he reported to me. He's been maintaining 2 sets of books. That's what we thought. Can you help us understand the discrepancies? For the next 2 hours, I walked Detective Morrison through the differences between Grant's reported income and his actual financial activity. It was extensive fraud, understated revenue, overstated expenses, hidden assets, false deductions. How much are we talking about? I asked. Approximately $2 million in unreported income over 3 years, plus another $1 million in fraudulent loan applications. And the personal stuff? Unpaid child support, hidden assets during divorce proceedings, multiple credit cards and false names. She leaned back in her chair. Mr. Irwin has been very busy. What do you need from me? Testimony about the documents he provided for tax preparation. Confirmation that you weren't aware of the real financial picture. And in exchange? In exchange, we put Grant Irwin in federal prison where he belongs. I thought about Tara, sitting in Samantha's living room, probably still believing Grant had been some kind of successful businessman instead of a common criminal. When do you need my testimony? Soon. We're planning to arrest Mr. Irwin this week. I drove home through Minneapolis traffic, thinking about justice and irony and the way the universe sometimes provided exactly the right ending to a story. That evening, I called Mallory with an update. Federal charges? She said. That's delicious. It gets better. Apparently Grant owes about $50,000 in unpaid child support and has been hiding assets from his divorce. So your wife was having an affair with a criminal. A broke criminal. All that flash, the Audi, the expensive dinners, it was all stolen money. How does this affect your divorce? It doesn't. The prenup stands regardless of Grant's legal problems. But it does make Tara's choices look even worse. Speaking of Tara, she called my office today. What did she want? To contest the prenup. She claims she signed under duress. Duress? She says you manipulated her into signing by threatening to divorce her anyway. I laughed. That's creative. It's also bullshit. She signed voluntarily, with full knowledge of the terms. The adultery clause was clearly stated. She has no grounds for contest. So we proceed? We proceed. I'll file the papers tomorrow. After I hung up, I sat in my living room now, legally and completely, and thought about the past 6 months. The suspicion, the investigation, the careful planning. It had all worked better than I'd dared to hope. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Harper, this is Grant. We need to talk." I stared at the message for a moment, then typed back, "No, we don't. Please, I can explain everything." "Already been explained. By Detective Morrison." A long pause, then, "You set me up." "You set yourself up. I just documented it." "This isn't over." "Yes, it is." I blocked the number and poured myself a scotch. Outside, Minneapolis was settling into evening, lights coming on in windows, people heading home from work to their normal lives with their normal problems. Tomorrow, I'd start looking for new clients to replace Grant's business. I'd call a realtor about selling the house. Too many memories, and I wanted a fresh start. I'd begin the process of rebuilding my life without Tara's constant dissatisfaction and Grant's criminal enterprises. But tonight, I was going to sit in my quiet house and enjoy the silence. The silence of a man who'd played a perfect game of chess against opponents who didn't even realize they were playing. The silence of justice served, revenge completed, and accounts finally rendered in full.